Estados Unidos transita por momentos de oscuridad y turbulencia. Desde que asumió la presidencia, Donald Trump ha manifestado una exótica retórica que pone en jaque a los ideales de respeto, tolerancia y diversidad que definieron por décadas al país norteamericano. Pero existen ciudades que no se dejan caer en la trampa del odio. Una de estas urbes es Denver, la capital de Colorado, que mantiene una visión progresista y vanguardista en las batallas culturales que azotan hoy a Estados Unidos. Denver se caracteriza por ser un espacio diverso y abierto para las nuevas ideas, para la juventud. Y Michael Hancock, el alcalde de esta ciudad, es el arquitecto detrás de esto. A sus 29 años, Hancock se convirtió en el director más joven de la organización Urban League, en donde luchó contra el racismo y la discriminación que afectaba a los afroamericanos. Posteriormente, decidió enfocar su carrera en la política y se integró exitosamente al Consejo de la ciudad. Desde 2011, teniendo poco más de 40 años, es alcalde del condado de Denver, cargo por el que fue reelecto en 2015 con más del 80% de aprobación del electorado. Michael Hancock es hoy nuestro invitado en La Era de las Definiciones.
Hola, ¿qué tal, amigas y amigos? Muy buenas noches, aquí de regreso con ustedes en TV Azteca, en este programa que es de ustedes y para ustedes, y que, como siempre, pues tratamos de platicar con gente interesante que está haciendo cosas interesantes e importantes, que son líderes, que son celebridades, y yo creo que a todos nos interesa ver qué está pasando en otros lugares del mundo. En esta ocasión tengo un invitado muy especial, sobre todo en estos momentos que la relación con los Estados Unidos se ha tensado, se ha complicado, porque ha llegado este personaje a la presidencia de este gran país y que ha sido más que agresivo con México, nos ha denigrado, nos ha ofendido y que nos ha hecho reaccionar a todos en el buen sentido de la palabra. Ahora, en ese contexto también decirlo, Estados Unidos es una gran nación, ha sido un gran socio, no fue un gran vecino hace tiempo, tuvimos guerras y conflictos entre nosotros, pero la verdad es que desde que los paisanos forman parte de esta gran nación aquí, desde que hay tanto intercambio entre ciudadanos americanos, ciudadanos mexicanos, que tenemos esta intensa corriente de turismo entre los dos países, nos entendemos mucho más, nos hemos esforzado en construir una relación amistosa, una buena vecindad y sobre todo una asociación en NAFTA. Entonces, en estas condiciones me parece a mí muy importante platicar con un alcalde que es todo un líder, que es un alcalde que toma decisiones, que es un alcalde que piensa de manera diferente y que es un alcalde que ha tenido coraje y valentía acaba de hacer una transformación de un decreto, una ley que ahora protege que no se ejerza la ley de manera indiscriminada, que no se ejerza por color o por que se es de otro país o inclusive que no se pueda ya permitir aquí el que se detenga a una persona o que se le pidan sus papeles nada más porque va caminando en la calle. Esto me parece que es algo que empieza a revertir y que ojalá y se extienda a todo Estados Unidos. Major, I'm sorry that I was speaking Spanish.
No, that's all right. It's cool
I'm sure you understood everything.
Some of it I did, actually, yes.
Okay, no. Thank you very much to be here with us. He is the mayor of the city of Denver. He is very successful and very dear here by the people. He's very popular, and as I said before, he takes decisions, and this is very important. So why don't we start? Tell us a little bit of your background. Yeah. Where do you come from? What family? What kind of a school? How did you grow up? And why, at a point in time, you took the decision to move from private sector to public sector, which is what I did one day.
Yes, well, it's a real pleasure to be with you today, President Fox. You know, I grew up in Denver, Colorado, born in Texas as the 10th child of Robert and Charlene Hancock.
10th.
10th. And I actually have a
a
twin.
good Mexican, eh?
Exactly. You know, a little bit of that in the family. Yeah,
I come from 9.
You come from 9, so we're
9.
close. But one unique aspect of my family, our parents had 3 sets of twins in the family, so they were very efficient, if anything. And I have a twin sister. And when my dad was military, so when we were babies, my twin sister and I, is when he got his last assignment, which was in Denver, Colorado, at the military base here called Fitzsimmons. And so we moved here. We were infants at the time, and raised here in this great city of ours. Went to college. When our parents divorced, let me start there, at age 5, my twin sister and I were 5. It really was kind of the start of what I consider the steamrolling down the hill. It was a very difficult time. Mom, bless her heart, who's still alive at 78 today, tried to raise 10 children as a single mother. Dad would move back to Texas with his family, but my mother did everything she can to raise to raise 10 kids, yes, and to feed us, to clothe us, to keep a roof over our heads. And it was very difficult. I will say we had nights where we were hungry. There were nights when we were cold. We were homeless at one point. So it was a very difficult upbringing. As we matriculated to school, an uncle of mine really kind of took interest in me. He wasn't a biological uncle, but someone who met my parents when he was in the military. Started, basically taking care of me and kind of showed me the importance of education, the importance of doing things right, being good to people. He was a Christian, made sure that I went to church and was baptized. And that really kind of changed my life. Up to that point, a lot of my brothers and sisters didn't graduate from high school. They struggled. We had drug addiction in our family. I like to tell people when you have the perfect number 10, you have some of everything. 1 in 10 do this, 2 in 10 do that, and so we experienced all of it as a family. Difficult upbringing. Lost a brother to AIDS. Lost a sister to domestic violence. By blessing, I went to high school, went to college, and came back to give back to my community. And I started my career in government, but went to the nonprofit community, was successful in running a pretty moderate-sized nonprofit. And ultimately, the opportunity came about where there was a city council seat open in my district and happened to be an area that was pretty large geographically, had the airport, the international airport in it, and I ran and was successful.
Was this public school? Your basic school, your high school?
And my schools were public, yeah. Matter of fact, I went to a very racially mixed school, which was historically one of the most diverse schools in the city, but also was where busing began in Denver, Colorado in terms of integration occurring. So I saw what it meant to go to school with very diverse students and had very diverse friends as a result of it. And that was very important to me growing up. And so I got to see all different types of worlds in Denver, Colorado, from the wealthiest to the poorest students were in that building together. And we got to see all parts of that in Denver, Colorado.
Good student, good sportsman?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. I played football, American football, ran track. There were a lot of great sports, and I got to go to school with some great athletes.
That's something that maybe you can extend a little bit, because in Mexico, unfortunately, on the public school system, either because there is no spaces or there was no money to build up the spaces, very little practice of sports and very little activities after school.
Sure.
Your 6 hours, your 8 hours. There is not much more for an average citizen in Mexico further than the regular school in class. How every school here is very important. Sports is part of the formation and the education and activities in the afternoon that go beyond just the regular education.
Oh, absolutely. The athletic programs in Denver and the after-school programs, not only in Denver but throughout the United States, are built to do a couple things. One, to create student athletes, and we believe obviously that if you're involved and engaged in athletics, you tend to be more healthy. And you tend to create great socialization with friends and camaraderie. You learn teamwork. You understand the aspect of strategizing, no matter what you're involved in. But secondly, after-school programming, whether it's athletics or otherwise, young people tend to be safer as a result of it. when young people
They're
are idle,
busy.
yeah, absolutely. They're busy. They tend to, you avoid things like teen pregnancies. Violence against young people decreases greatly when they're involved in activities, as opposed to having idle time to run throughout the community. And they tend to be a little more focused. And again, socialization is a part of it. So we have found that when you have strong after-school programs, whether it's athletics or whatever you're engaging young people in, they tend to do much better academically. They tend to graduate on time, and they tend to avoid the pitfalls that tend to trip young people up, including teen pregnancies, including violence and other criminal activities.
I also have seen that is part of the education is social responsibility. It's working with the community or for the community, right from the beginning on basic school. Is that so?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the ideal of what we call neighborhood schools is very important. The fact that you can walk to your school, the fact that you can identify with that school, the fact that maybe your family, your parents, your brothers, older brothers, siblings, brothers and sisters went to the school. Extremely important for making sure young people feel connected to their schools. There's a great deal of pride built into those schools. And as a result, schools tend to be very spirited, and neighborhoods tend to be safer because they become kind of the epicenter of those neighborhoods.
Yeah, I see philanthropy is also a very important part of the doing of this nation, not only the economy and the job, but also philanthropy and volunteerism and doing for others.
Right. America is a great nation today because of exactly what you were talking about, volunteerism, philanthropy. Americans giving of themselves, giving of their treasure to address major causes. You know, we all have causes, right? Whether it's health related, whether it's crime, whether it's children and other things related. So yeah, those things help close the gap where the government simply doesn't have the resources to make them reach.
Denver es un condado étnicamente diverso. Cerca de un tercio de su población pertenece a alguna etnia no caucásica. Entre su diversidad destacan los hispanos, quienes constituyen más del 20% de la población. Gracias a este perfil, Denver ha podido crecer en un mundo globalizado, donde es obligatorio aceptar la diversidad y las diferencias para ser exitosos. Para sobresalir en la realidad contemporánea, se requiere fortalecer lazos con personas de distintos orígenes, creencias, tradiciones y culturas. Denver ha logrado esto y se ha coronado como la segunda mejor ciudad para vivir en Estados Unidos.
I see that today some universities make maybe the largest part of their income, besides donation and support from the community, by their sports team.
Oh yeah, big business.
Yeah, big business, no big income for the university.
Oh, absolutely. It could mean hundreds of millions of dollars to a university, depending on how large the university is. But yeah, no, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry here in the United States.
You know, in our big Mexico City, 22, 24 million inhabitants, we wish we could have one stadium like the ones universities have.
Right.
I just saw the one in Fort Worth on Texas Christian
the Dallas,
University.
sure.
They just built a cathedral, I mean, an impressive building.
Right.
And they tell me this is because we get return from this.
Yeah, when those universities and their teams are making the school hundreds and hundreds of million dollars, some $1 billion, they can afford those kind of programs. I mean, our stadiums, because people are walking in there, and then they start making money off concessions where they're selling food and drinks and parking. So it's big business in the U.S.
Do you think that your first steps in discovering of your leadership came through the ambiente from the school, from home, or you have something within yourself that you go discovering, or it's a combination of both? Because on the second part of the program, I'll ask you when was that point where you discovered you were a leader and you decided to exercise your leadership, and
Sure.
you decided to exercise it in the benefit of others?
Yeah.
When did you get that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's all of that. I think it's something about you inside that is there, that has to be discovered by yourself and by others. I think it's your family. If I think back on how I grew up, being the youngest of 10 children, if you don't learn to be diplomatic and strategic and learn from lessons of others, you got, at some point you start paying attention, going, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So you kind of learn the game as the youngest of 10, and that becomes, if you really think about it, and you have reached the pinnacle of politics in Mexico. There are little lessons along your life, right? As a child, as a teen, as a college student, as a young professional, you remember, go, that's where I picked that up from. I remember that lesson at some point. And the same for me. Many things that I do today, I think back on being the youngest of 10 kids and being smart enough to figure it out.
One teacher that had a strong influence on you?
A lot of teachers, but there was a 6th grade teacher, Miss Clark, who allowed me one day to actually pitch a fit in the classroom. Then when I talk about pitch a fit, Mr. President, I'm talking about tipping desks, I'm talking about throwing books, I'm talking about wrestling with her to get me, as she tried to get me to the principal's office, and I'm talking tears and snot slinging, and she got me in front of that principal, and clearly could have just thrown me under the bus and said, this kid can never come back to my class again. And instead, she held me by my collar in front of that teacher, and she said, the principal, and said, this is the brightest student in my class. And she said, instead of telling the principal all that I did, she said, I just told him he's going to give the continuation speech in front of his classmates, and he's just a little emotional about it. So let's let him sit down and calm down. And the principal goes, oh, sure, go sit down. And that changed my life. That moment right there with Miss Clark, that was it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going for a break, and we will be right back in a few minutes. I'm here in this city, not only because of what I mentioned at the beginning, but I'm here because I want to connect with people that is building bridges, people that knows the importance of partnering, of having friends, of working together. And let me start right there asking you, how do you describe the situation today? Why did it come about? Because we're all surprised outside of the United States.
Yeah.
We don't catch, we don't understand what's going on.
You know, I think the United States finds itself at the crossroads, and a socioeconomic crossroads, in that there are segments of our nation that have felt left out and not spoken to. No one's addressing who they are. And you know, we've had very, I think, direct acknowledgement of disenfranchised communities in terms of people of color, in terms of LGBTQ members in our community, and others. But then there's a segment of the community that someone has not talked to. No one's tapped. No one's identified them in their rhetoric. And all of a sudden you have this guy come along who acknowledges that there is a segment of this community that's undercurrent, and he's going to tap it. By any means necessary, he's going to tap it. And he did it. He did it effectively. and where he woke them up, and maybe they had not participated in the political mainstream for many years, and all of a sudden someone called their name. You are the coal miners, you are the underbelly of our society, and I'm calling you out because I'm here to talk. No one's calling your name, and I'm calling you out. And so they showed up and voted. When everyone else thought it was safe, and maybe my vote won't matter because she's going to win it anyway, they were canceled out and overwhelmed by those who all of a sudden felt awakened by this guy calling them out. And that's why we have this change. Now, whether or not he's able to address a lot of their concerns is a different story, but I don't think that was ever his objective, number one. It was simply win this election and prove that you could win it.
Yes, yes. And this group, this community, these guys, these citizens that felt like that, how large is it, and what are they expecting?
Well, I think you're looking at probably a third of America, because about a third is the base that he got elected by, and as a result, you have a few who may not have been happy with the other side, and so they choose or were looking for an alternative as well. Ultimately, you have a compounded challenge where this guy was able to, on almost impossibly, but possibly, put together enough votes to win the Electoral College and become the President of the United States. And so, yeah, many of us, most of us, 2/3 of America were shocked that night. And so you got a third of the people who are sitting there going, that's the guy who speaks to me, who speaks for me, and we're not moving from him.
I have to say this. I think that's a good way in trying to explain what happened, and in trying to look at it positively. But is really that? Is he really committed with helping? And on the other side, are these people really expecting opportunities? Of a job? I understand this nation is close to full employment, or progress, or increase their income, or what we don't understand from the outside is how the most successful, most powerful, highest income nation and economy in the world complains.
Right.
I mean, we can complain in Africa, we can complain in Mexico or in Latin America.
Well, two things. One is nothing gets people to move to action than fear, right? And I think what you saw was a lot of fear. America, the world, our society is in the midst of a major transformation. We go from, in energy, for example, you've got coal miners who voted overwhelmingly for this current president, who said, I'm going to bring back coal jobs. And the reality is that the energy revolution has moved on. And the reality, those jobs aren't coming back, not because people don't want to employ you, but simply the market has moved on. And not to acknowledge that, and to be honest about the fact that, yeah, coal plays a role, but not to the level that it used to play. And to promise jobs that are not going to be there as a result of the industry or the market moving on is, really a play on the emotions of people who were very fearful and scared because this is all they knew. And so that's an example, kind of a simple example of how he's been able to kind of tap and wake up some folks. The second thing I will tell you is when there is much prosperity, you tend to have, that's when you tend to expose kind of the real challenges that maybe have gone on overlooked during that time. We have a lot in this nation, but the challenge is that 90% of all wealth is concentrated with 6% of this population. And people see that and know that income and wealth inequalities is the greatest threat to the nation of the United States of America's economic prominence in this world and the sovereignty of this as a great nation. We have got to work to fix that, and I think that the people of this country saw that, and what you see as a result is the election of this president.
Yeah, this gold boat mine that he discovered, I'm not sure he's going to take it to the right port in the right direction. So he got the boat now, he got the responsibility. But I see my own experience. I came from business. I was president and CEO of the Coca-Cola company.
Right.
Mexico, Latin America, and I decided to go politics because I wanted to do something for Mexico, for my nation, specifically for the authoritarian government we have, the lack of democracy, the lack of transparency. So I decided to jump in and do something. But it was a hard learning process.
Right.
I thought that everything I knew how to do in business, all the tools and strategies that you use in business could be transferred to running a nation or running a state. And I found out that there's no similarity. It's totally different. Of course, in business you plan, and in politics you plan. Of course, you form teams in business, and you form teams there.
Right.
But the way you execute,
Exactly.
the way I saw this guy throwing executive orders.
Oh, yeah.
I remember my business times. You would do that. You would instruct. You would throw orders, and everybody would follow. Right. But in politics, I learned that nothing like that happens. And everybody, even your own team of people, your own secretaries of different areas of government, they will have their own thoughts. They will not just follow blindly the guy that gave the instruction, and they would do as they would think be best for their job.
Well, one of the things that we learn, and you know this, having served as president of Mexico, that just because you have the title doesn't mean that you have the capacity to lead, right? And a lot of people rise to their level of incompetence, the Peter principle. And I believe clearly we are seeing that demonstration here. One of the first things that I learned as mayor of Denver, and in any leadership role that I've been in, the most important, there are two very important principles that you start with. One is the vision, and two, to surround yourself with people who complement your weaknesses and also bring their expertise to the table, but have the willingness to capture your vision and to make it their own and to move forward with it. And then you as a leader have to be wise enough to listen to their advice, right? That's why you hired them. That's why you brought them around you. And I never wanted people who agree with me 100% of the time, because you're no good. I agree with myself 100% of the time, So why do I need you? I'd rather have people who can think critically, who will offer their critical and strategic advice to me as a leader, and have the ultimate common good of the organization or the city or the nation at heart, right? Love this nation, love the city more than you love me. In other words, bring your heart and your advice and your sage wisdom to the table, because that's what we're going to need to keep it going forward. There is nothing that I've seen with this leader that has shown me that he has the ability to listen to the people around him and to act accordingly. There have been numerous examples where we have seen where if you were simply engaged as a leader and you had the capacity to lead, you would approach it differently. Immigration, for example. We know the system is broken. Instead of trying to invoke fear, it's simply, as a nation, let's have a serious conversation how we want to create a constructive policy. With world leaders in Mexico, instead of saying I'm going to build a wall to keep you out, how about we build bridges and figure out what those policies look like to engage our hemisphere in a more productive and a more robust relationship, right? Those are the things that leaders do. It's not about you. It's about the fact that we live in a global economy and we all have to be safe. We're going to need Mexico at times, like we did in Katrina, when Mexico showed up with their Army and Navy, say we're here to help. And like you've offered in Texas to say we are here if you need us. And there are going to be times you're going to need us. And so we got to recognize we have a mutual dependence upon one another. And as a nation, as a hemisphere, as a global economy, we have to figure this thing out. That's what leaders do.
Let me ask you here. We are discussing and trying to understand where he got the votes to become president. But I frequently heard that is not as much as he was able to pull and attract votes as the fact or the case that Hillary was not the right candidate on the Democratic side. How much would that be part of the success of Trump?
Yeah.
Would it be?
Oh, yeah, without question. I clearly, there isn't one idea of why this guy became the President of the United States. And I think that if you take the fear and the lack of acknowledgement in this economy, that's one. Clearly, Hillary Clinton had a difficult time capturing the imagination, the vision, the commitment of people of this nation. I supported her after she and I had a very long, engaging conversation about things that matter to me, but I wasn't automatically on board. And so most Americans weren't able to get on board. So I think it was clear that that never happened to the extent that would make her President of the United States. And we look back on her strategy in terms of her campaign. In fact, there were certain places she didn't go that he was absolutely willing to go and talk to the individuals and talk to their issues. He met people where they were. That mattered to some people. And so she continued on with the old blueprint of what Democrats do. I'm a proud Democrat, but I got to tell you, the policy and the strategy around this election failed her campaign, and it failed the American people.
Okay. We go to a break and we'll be right back.
Empresario, filántropo, escritor y político. Michael Hancock es actualmente uno de los 11 alcaldes más interesantes y prometedores de Estados Unidos, de acuerdo con Political Magazine.
I am proud to announce that I am running for re-election this month.
Por ello, no resulta sorprendente que en 2011 Hancock fuera galardonado con el Premio al Liderazgo Antonio Villarraigosa, un reconocimiento entregado por la Red de Líderes Latinos de Estados Unidos a los individuos que destacan por su labor hacia la comunidad latina. Una sociedad global requiere de líderes con una visión amplia y profunda. Michael Hancock ha demostrado ser uno de ellos. Tras 7 años al frente del condado de Denver, Hancock se ha comprometido con los valores liberales y la multiculturalidad, creando puentes nacionales e internacionales en vez de muros y divisiones. Gracias a ello, Denver es hoy una de las 20 ciudades con mayor crecimiento económico en todo Estados Unidos.
Okay, Major, you've been working hard here in profound changes or a new look and positioning of the city. A lot of innovations. Tell us a little bit about that. I understand you work very strongly on the airport, for instance, to attract people, to promote trade, that you're very interested in building these bridges with Mexico, also to promote the city, but at the same time to enhance the economic possibilities of the city.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I did prior to running for mayor in 2011 was to really think about what does a 21st century city look like, a 21st century globally competitive city look like. And whether you're in Mexico City or Cabo or Denver, Colorado, the reality is that cities that recognize and acknowledge the importance of being globally fluent are those that are going to be the most competitive going forward. And you don't have to be, Chicago, San Francisco, or Cabo. You can be Mexico City, you can be Denver, Colorado. It's all about your mindset. It's about recognizing that technology has allowed us to traverse our coastal boundaries and to compete and very quickly and to be known. And so one of the things that I recognized was that we don't have water in Denver that connects us to the world. Trains are not going to get over some of the mountains. Our airport is the greatest port that we have. And we wanted to leverage that airport to connect to the rest of the world. Mexico City was very strategically important to us. You talk about trade, you talk about tourism, you talk about the exchange of ideas and intellectual capital. Those are the things we were pursuing with all of Mexico, but certainly Mexico City with 24 million inhabitants was strategically important to us. And we have seen just through that direct flight how important it is to our tourism, how important it's been to our trade. And so we want to be a globally competitive city. And that means that we want Mexicans to know us as well as we want Icelanders to know us, or Londoners to know us. It's very important to us.
What ingredients is to be competitive? What is it? Is a city that has great traffic and great infrastructure, or has great airport, or has factories, or has technology?
Sure.
What makes a city be competitive and attractive? So you want people to come here?
Yeah, we want to attract tourism first and foremost, because obviously people come here for a variety of reasons, but main reason is skiing, right? And the snow sports, which attract people. Secondly, of course, it's a very friendly city to come into. There's a lot to do. It's very vibrant, it's robust. People come here, they enjoy their time in Denver, Colorado. But there's a lot, we're very close to the mountains. So you can be in Denver and then be in the mountains literally 30 to 45 minutes. That's a powerful statement. But then it's the rest of those things. It is the innovation, it is the business, it is the manufacturing to some point in an area that we really are working on to expand, because we want to do even more trade with the rest of the world. But it's all those things together. It's the exchange of ideas. It's the exchange of intellectual capital. We want Mexican students to come here and study, and we want American students to go to Mexico and study, immerse themselves in language. This is a global economy. And the more you're able to diverse different cultures, particularly Spanish-speaking cultures, the more successful you're going to be in business or wherever you decide to go. So my generation, as Generation X, is probably the last one who'll get away without really the opportunity to engage in a multicultural opportunity. We better have a little bit of it, but it's the generations behind us, the millennials and the next generation, that really should be immersing themselves. And by us opening those doors and creating those connectivities, they're going to be ready to be more globally competitive themselves, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. So it's human capital, it's universities, it's
Right.
mobility, it's traffic, it's everything. This brings me back to this 30%. Is it where he is because of it didn't move?
Right.
It didn't go to Boston, to Austin, to Denver, to Silicon Valley, to somewhere else? Because these cities are nourished with a lot of young entrepreneurs,
Right.
millennials, people searching for doing better.
Yeah. Well, I think the most powerful element of countries like Mexico and the United States is really the right to think for yourselves, right? For ourselves as individuals. And yeah, we're young, we're innovative, we're vibrant, but you have a bent based on the filter that you grew up with, the environment you come from, the expectations that were embedded in you from your environment. And so, the reality is that those young entrepreneurs and innovators and energetic young professionals got a chance to think for themselves in terms of who they wanted to be their leader and who was speaking to them and who they most wanted to have a beer with. Maybe that was the reason that they decided to go his direction. But you were a politician who ran for office, as I was. The first thing you do when you sit down with your advisor and say, I want to win, is to test what your base is. And if you got a 30% base or 35% base, you know what, that's a pretty good base to launch from. And say, now all I got to do is disrupt enough to gather a few of the maybe right or conservative-leaning Democrats and a few very conservative Republican and evangelicals, and I can put together the case that, you know what, we can win this race. We've got to remember, he didn't win the popular vote. Yeah. It was a strategy to win the electoral college vote, and that's exactly what he pulled off.
Yeah, I invited to come to Mexico the guy that made that happen for Trump.
Right.
This is this Cambridge Analytics, this strategic firm from London, which has a system whereby targets and knows voters or consumers what is the message in what community, but always addressed us in the case of United States.
Absolutely.
Of delegates instead of popular vote.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that? That's unique in the world. I mean, we usually have direct vote, and it's the general vote that counts, not delegate votes.
Yeah,
Is that to stay, or it should be evolved into something different or not?
Yeah, I think it's not going to change. It's the American way of electing the president. And the reasons it came about were really built out of the inequalities of voting and really, the history of American elections. And so it's really about how you include everyone and make sure that it really is about every person's vote counting, and that those states that are much smaller than some of the larger states have equal ability to participate in the election of the president. So I don't really expect that the Electoral College is going to change in the United States. The election of this president really has awakened the American people. And it will be a very long time, if it ever happens again, to see this type of election go down like this again. No one's going to take the election of any president for granted again. And no matter how popular or how assured we may think someone's election is, everybody's going to work like hell until the last vote is counted from this very point forward, until everybody in line gets their vote, and then no one should take their vote for granted. The Democratic Party is going to have to change the way it approaches elections. It's going to have to evolve. The people have evolved. And a very, I think, serious and strong message has been sent that, first of all, we need to have a message that includes everyone. To your point, this is American people. We are Americans. And what are the issues we care about right now? More than anything, meet us where we are. And most Americans are most concerned about the ability, just like Mexicans are concerned about taking care of their family, remaining safe in their house and in their neighborhoods, the ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, individually. And they don't want intrusion from government. Do your job, government, and let me live the fulfillment of my life based on my potential to do it. And don't get in the way of that. And when you do that and you meet people where they are, they're more likely to be happy, right? And they're more likely to engage and to lean in. We missed the message as Democrats. And
one thing that is happening all over the world is that electoral results or results of an election are so tight lately. The difference between the winner and the other, and in our case we have 10 different political parties.
Yeah.
But the difference between the first and the second is so teeny that usually we are minority governments.
Yes.
Most everywhere in the world. And it becomes very difficult to be able to govern, to have governance, and to have the capacity to change things, to bring in new programs. And I see that here, that right now, this situation between Democrats and Republicans and this end result of such a tight situation.
Absolutely.
The nation is the one that is not moving.
Absolutely.
It's stagnant, it's stopped, and I don't know. What do you see in the future? When this will come back to have the energy of this leader?
Yeah, Americans have got to be bold and recognize that it's not just the president, it's Congress that's not moving.
Yes.
To your point, decisions aren't being made, we aren't making critical. When's the last time we passed a budget in this nation? That gives you an example of what the challenges are in this country. Our partisan politics have gotten in the way of the progress of this nation, while other nations are moving on. And they're getting more innovative, and they're able to innovate their transportation network. They're able to innovate their aviation network. They're able to innovate their educational systems and to bring along those that have been left behind to make sure they have better access to education and health care as a result, right? We get bogged down in the partisan politics, and it really has become a challenge for Americans but the reality is the only ones who can change it are us, the voters. And I think that when you ask what the future holds, if there is a positive side to the election of this president, is that I am seeing all over this country folks who are starting to say, if there is going to be a change, it's me. And I'm going to look to run for office. I'm going to look to further engage. I tell you, at least once a week, I'm taking a phone call from someone saying, how do I do this? How do I become a council member? How do I become a member of Congress? What do you think about me running for governor?
Positives things
That's a
came
positive
out
outcome. And I think in the next election, particularly the 2018 election, you're going to see more people stepping up, engaging all over this country that people never thought would run for Congress because we're tired of the
Let me tell you here, what is happening here with individuals, with citizens on this that you're referring to, is happening in the world. The leader is not there anymore for the moment.
Right.
We were used to the leadership of the United States. Everybody was waiting, expecting what the United States is going to be doing. And usually it was doing a lot of great things in business and economy, in wealth creation, in politics and diplomacy, everywhere. But what is going on now is that now everybody's jumping in and saying, well, if we don't have the leadership,
Right.
now many want to take the leadership.
Right.
Or Mexico for the first time, because we had all of our eggs in one basket, our trade balance is 85% done with the United States and Canada,
Sure.
and 15 with the rest of the world. Now we said, well, this basket might not be working for me anymore.
Yeah.
Let's just start shopping around and see who we're going to trade with. And same thing in politics, diplomacy, leadership. We decided to move ahead with the TPP, for instance. United States says we're not participating, we're not going to be there. We don't think it's good trading in that way. So the rest of us, we're meeting, we're following, and moving along.
Yeah, you're being globally fluent. And the reality is that, to the point that you made earlier, when the expected stakeholder doesn't fill that void, someone else will. And you're right, you're seeing countries like Mexico, you're seeing countries like China, Russia, others step up and say, we'll do it. If they don't want to play, we'll do it. And that's unfortunate in a sense that as a United States, as an American, we have been active around the world, and we should be, continue to be.
Yes.
This isolationist type policy doesn't work, and I think you laid out a great case. History has proven it doesn't work. Especially today, when everyone is working to be more globally competitive. Wherever you go in the world, whether it's Mexico City, Colombia, Brazil, China, you see different nationalities playing and engaging and trading and doing business. And America should be no different.
Well, Michael, we've run out of time. Thank you for your comments.
It's been a real
for your
pleasure. Thank you for
wisdom.
having me.
Very important for us at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Really my pleasure.
Pleasure.